The Galactic Council had ruled the Orion Arm for over 300 cycles. 7 species, each older and more powerful than the last, sat in judgment over every civilization that dared reach for the stars. They called themselves the Guardians of Order, the Keepers of Balance. To them, peace meant control, and control meant obedience. For a long time, no one dared challenge them. Then came humanity. Earth had only broken the light barrier 70 years ago. In cosmic terms, that was less than a blink. Yet in that short time, humans had built colonies on Mars, Luna, and the moons of Jupiter. They had sent probes beyond the Oort cloud and established trade with 2 minor alien species on the fringe of Council space. Their ships were small, their weapons crude by Council standards, but their drive was unmatched. They learned fast. They adapted faster, and worst of all, they asked too many questions. That was the real problem. Not their ships or their colonies, but their refusal to accept the Council's word as law. When the Council declared the Zeta Reticuli system off limits due to cultural preservation, human survey teams entered it anyway. When the Council demanded all FTL research be shared for security review, Earth scientists politely declined, citing sovereignty. Each act was minor on its own, but together they painted a picture the Council could not ignore. Humanity was unpredictable. And in a galaxy built on predictability, unpredictability was a disease. The emergency session was called without warning. All 7 Council species gathered in the Grand Conclave Chamber, a vast dome floating above the gas giant Virel Prime. Holographic thrones shimmered into place as ambassadors materialized from their homeworlds. At the center of the chamber stood Carl Dawson, Earth's ambassador. He was a man in his late 50s with tired eyes and a calm voice that had carried him through decades of tense negotiations. He wore a simple gray suit, no armor, no ceremonial robes, just the uniform of a man who believed in words over weapons. High Arbiter Kalen of the Virelians presided over the session. Tall, silver-skinned, with eyes like polished obsidian, Kalen spoke rarely but always with finality. Today his voice echoed through the chamber like ice cracking under pressure. Species designation human origin Sol system. Status non-compliant. Repeated violations of Galactic Accords Articles 12, 19, and 44. Unauthorized exploration. Refusal of oversight. Disregard for established boundaries. Carl kept his hands clasped behind his back. He had expected this. With respect, Arbiter, humanity has never attacked another species. We've sought only to explore, to learn. The Zeta Reticuli system was empty. No life, no ruins, no cultural artifacts. We found nothing but dust and asteroids. A fact you determined without Council authorization, Kalen replied. Your kind assumes. You act, you do not ask. That is the pattern. And patterns, Ambassador, become threats. Carl took a slow breath. We're not a threat. We're students. Young, yes, but willing to listen. Give us a seat at the table. Let us prove we belong. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Qatari ambassador, a multi-limbed being draped in iridescent silk, hissed softly. Students do not ignore warnings. Students do not bypass patrol zones. Students do not develop phase shift drives in secret. We developed nothing in secret, Carl said. Our research is published openly on the Interstellar Data Exchange. Anyone can read it. Which is precisely why it must stop, Kalen said. Your openness is chaos. Your curiosity is contagion. Other young species watch you. They see your defiance and think it is strength. It is not. It is recklessness. Carl felt the weight of the moment pressing down. He had argued with bureaucrats, generals, even alien warlords, but never with an entire galaxy's ruling body that had already made up its mind. Still, he tried one last time. Humanity isn't asking for special treatment, just a chance. We'll accept observers on our ships. We'll submit our research for review, but don't shut us out. Don't treat us like criminals for wanting to reach the stars. Kalen was silent for a long moment. Then he turned to the other ambassadors. A series of clicks, hums, and light pulses passed between them, silent communication older than human language. When Kalen faced Carl again, his expression had not changed, but something in the air had shifted. The Council has deliberated, he said. Your species has been granted patience far beyond what is customary. That patience ends now. He raised one long-fingered hand. A hologram flickered to life above the chamber floor. A countdown. 30 solar cycles, 30 Earth days. The terms are final. Within this period, humanity must 1. Decommission all vessels capable of faster-than-light travel. 2. Surrender all research related to quantum slipstream, warp resonance, and subspace tunneling. 3. Accept permanent planetary quarantine. No ships may leave the Sol system without Council approval. Compliance will be verified by Varelian monitors stationed on Earth, Mars, and Luna. Carl's throat tightened. And if we refuse? Kalen's gaze did not waver. Then the Armada of Purity will be dispatched. Your fleet will be dismantled. Your colonies will be evacuated. Your planet will be placed under direct Council governance. Resistance will be met with total force. There will be no second warning. The words hung in the air like smoke. Carl knew what total force meant. The Armada of Purity had erased 3 civilizations in the last century. Entire worlds gone in a single campaign. No survivors. No records. Just silence where stars once shone. He bowed his head slightly. I will deliver your message. You will do more than deliver it, Kalen said. You will ensure it is obeyed. The fate of your species rests on your compliance. The session ended. The holograms faded. Carl was escorted out by silent enforcers, their armor gleaming under the twin suns of Varel Prime. As his shuttle lifted off, he looked back at the Grand Conclave chamber, a glittering spire against the swirling clouds of the gas giant. It looked beautiful, orderly, final. Back on Earth, the message was received in stunned silence. President Elena Ruiz gathered her top advisors in the underground war room beneath Geneva. Military leaders, scientists, diplomats, all watched the recording of Kalen's decree. When it ended, no one spoke for nearly a minute. Finally, Defense Coordinator Luke Hayes broke the quiet. They're not giving us a choice. They're giving us an execution date. Dr. Nora Finch, head of the Quantum Physics Division, rubbed her temples. If we surrender our FTL research, we lose everything. Our independence, our future, our ability to defend ourselves. Carl, still in his travel-stained suit, leaned against the wall. They think we'll fold. They think we're too young to fight. President Ruiz stood by the window, though there was no sky to see underground. Then we show them what young really means. No declarations were made that day. No emergency broadcasts. No panic in the streets. But deep in hidden labs and shielded shipyards, quiet orders began to flow. Engineers powered up dormant reactors. Scientists reopened sealed archives. Captains checked their manifests and double-checked their stealth protocols. The Galactic Council had drawn a line in the stars and told humanity not to cross it. But humans had never been good at staying inside lines. They had spent their entire history pushing past them, across oceans, over mountains, into the void. And now, faced with extinction or surrender, they chose neither. They chose something the Council had never considered. They chose to rewrite the rules. Earth did not panic. That was the first surprise. When the Council's ultimatum reached every screen, every comm device, every public broadcast system, people expected riots, mass evacuations, or at least a flood of desperate messages sent into the void. But none came. Instead, cities grew quieter. Factories hummed louder. Schools stayed open. The world held its breath, but it did not break. President Elena Ruiz made no grand speech. She issued a single order. Maintain normal operations. Trust your leaders. Prepare in silence. And somehow billions obeyed, not because they were told to, but because they understood. This was not a time for noise. This was a time for work. Deep beneath the red sands of Mars, in a facility known only as Site Theta, engineers worked in shifts that blurred day into night. They weren't building weapons, at least not the kind anyone would recognize. No cannons, no missiles, no plasma cores. What they were assembling was smaller than a human hand, wrapped in layers of cryo-shielded alloy, pulsing with a faint blue light that seemed to breathe. It was called a quantum seed, and it was the heart of Project Oblivion. Dr. Nora Finch had proposed the idea 10 years earlier, back when humanity was still welcome at minor council symposiums. She had presented a paper on vacuum metastability, a theory that the universe's empty space might not be truly stable. If triggered correctly, a tiny region of space could collapse into a lower energy state, rewriting the laws of physics as it expanded. The effect would be unstoppable, erasing matter not with fire but with silence. Her paper was dismissed as fantasy, too dangerous, too theoretical. Now, with 30 days ticking away, it was the only hope left. Nora wasn't a dramatic woman. She wore plain jumpsuits, kept her dark hair in a loose bun, and drank too much black coffee. But her mind moved like lightning. She stood in the center of Site Theta's main chamber, watching as technicians sealed the third seed into its containment cradle. "Test the resonance lock," she said. A young engineer named Ben tapped his console. Lights blinked green. "Stable," he confirmed. Across the system, similar efforts unfolded. On Luna, in the shadow of Tycho Crater, Captain Derek Boone reviewed flight paths with his pilots. His fleet wasn't large, just 12 corvettes, each no bigger than a cargo hauler. But they were coated in adaptive stealth mesh, invisible to most sensors and powered by silent ion drives. Their mission wasn't to fight. It was to disappear, and to place things where no one would look. Derek was lean, with sharp eyes and a dry sense of humor that rarely showed these days. He had lost 2 friends during the border skirmish near Proxima, not to enemy fire, but to a council patrol that opened fire without warning. He hadn't forgotten. None of them had. But revenge wasn't the goal now. Survival was. And if survival meant becoming something the galaxy had never seen before, then so be it. Back on Earth, Luke Hayes coordinated everything from a bunker buried under the Rocky Mountains. Maps covered the walls, star charts, fleet positions, council patrol routes. He didn't sleep much. When he did, he dreamed of silence. Not peaceful silence, but the kind that follows total erasure. He knew what they were building. He knew what it could do, and he prayed they'd never have to use it. Yet every hour more components were shipped off-world. Cryo containers left hidden docks in Antarctica. Data cores were smuggled aboard civilian freighters heading to the asteroid belt. Even the old orbital stations, long thought abandoned, came alive with maintenance drones and repair crews. Humanity was folding in on itself, not in fear but in focus. The Council watched, of course. Their long-range sensors tracked every launch, every energy spike. But what they saw confused them. No warships were being armed. No battle groups formed. Earth's military activity appeared normal. Routine maintenance, supply runs, scientific missions. To the Council, it looked like surrender in slow motion. They assumed humanity had accepted its fate. They were wrong. What the Council didn't see were the quantum dampeners masking energy signatures. They didn't detect the encrypted data streams bouncing between moons using laser relays hidden inside comet tails. They didn't know that every human colony, every research outpost, every mining rig had been given a single instruction. If you hear nothing for 48 hours, activate Protocol Ember. Protocol Ember wasn't an attack. It was a failsafe, a way to ensure that if Earth fell, the knowledge and the means would survive. Seeds were hidden in vaults beneath Martian ice, inside hollowed-out asteroids, even buried in the crust of Venus. Humanity was planting its future like seeds in dark soil, hoping something would grow even if they did not. Meanwhile, on the surface, life went on. Children went to school. Farmers harvested crops, artists painted, musicians played. But beneath that calm surface, a current ran deep and cold. People spoke less. They listened more. They helped strangers without asking why. There was a quiet understanding spreading across the planet. This might be the last month of human history. And if it was, they would meet it with dignity, not despair. Nora visited Earth once during the countdown, just for 12 hours. She walked through a park in Chicago, watching families picnic under autumn trees. She bought a coffee from a street vendor who didn't recognize her. For a moment, she let herself imagine a world where none of this was happening, where humans could just be, but the moment passed. She returned to Site Theta that night, her resolve harder than before. By day 20, the first full quantum seed was ready. It sat in a reinforced chamber, humming softly, its internal field holding back a power that could unmake atoms. Nora ran the final diagnostics herself. "It's stable," she told Luke over a secure line. "But it's not a weapon. It's a key, and once we turn it, there's no going back." "We won't need to go back," Luke replied. "We'll either win, or there won't be anyone left to care." On day 25, Derek's fleet launched, not with fanfare but in the dead of lunar night. 12 corvettes slipped away from hidden hangars, their engines throttled to near-zero output. They vanished into the asteroid belt, then deeper toward the outer system. Their cargo holds were filled with sensor buoys, not for spying but for jamming. Each buoy carried a micropulse emitter tuned to disrupt subspace harmonics. Alone, they did nothing. Together, they could blind an entire fleet. The Council noticed the buoys, of course, but they assumed they were decoys. desperate tricks from a dying species. They sent scout ships to investigate. None returned. Their signals simply stopped. The council grew uneasy, but still they did not change their plan. Arrogance is a slow poison, and the council had been drinking it for centuries. On Earth, the countdown reached single digits. Cities dimmed their lights. Power was rerouted to defense grids. Families gathered not in fear but in quiet solidarity. No one knew if tomorrow would come, but everyone knew what they had to do today. And in the silence between heartbeats, humanity prepared not to fight, but to end the fight before it began. Not with rage, but with precision. Not with noise, but with the quiet certainty of a species that had stared into the abyss and decided to blink last. The Armada of Purity arrived at the edge of the Sol system on the morning of Day 30. 2,000 warships, each larger than a city, glided through the void with the cold grace of predators. Their hulls shimmered with energy shields. Their weapon arrays hummed with stored power. They moved as one mind, one will, the will of the Galactic Council. They expected resistance. They expected pleas. They expected fear. What they did not expect was silence. No human fleet rose to meet them. No distress signals crackled over open channels. No last-minute broadcast begged for mercy. The inner system was dark. Earth's orbital defenses showed no activity. Mars was quiet. Even the asteroid belt seemed empty. It was as if humanity had vanished overnight. High Arbiter Kalen watched from the command spire of the flagship Eternal Edict, his silver face unreadable. "Scan for life signs," he ordered. "Confirm planetary status." The sensors returned clean readings. Billions of humans still lived on Earth. Cities glowed with light. Power grids hummed. But there were no ships, no weapons charging, no military movement. It made no sense. Species did not simply give up without a word. Perhaps they accepted their fate, suggested the Qatari liaison, its many eyes blinking in unison. Kalen did not answer. He had studied human history. He knew they were stubborn. They had fought ice ages, plagues, world wars. They had clawed their way out of caves and into the stars in the blink of cosmic time. Surrender was not in their nature, and yet, here they were, silent, still, waiting. He decided not to wait longer. Deploy the enforcement fleet. Move to high orbit over Earth. Prepare planetary lockdown protocols. Send the final message. A transmission was beamed directly to every human communication node. Kalen's voice, calm and final, filled homes, offices, and public squares across the planet. "Your silence is your surrender. The Council accepts your compliance. Monitors will arrive within 6 hours. Resistance will not be tolerated. On Earth, no one moved. No protests, no panic. The message played once, then faded into static. But deep beneath the ice of Europa, in a chamber carved into the moon's frozen crust, Dr. Nora Finch stood before a console lined with blinking lights. She wore a thermal suit, her breath fogging the air. Around her, engineers monitored quantum field stability. Captain Derek Boone's voice crackled over the comm from his Corvette, hidden in the shadow of Saturn's rings. "All buoys are active. Subspace jamming field is at 98% coverage. They're blind to anything beyond visual range." Nora nodded. "Good, they think we're done. Now we show them what done really looks like." She entered a command sequence. A low hum filled the chamber, rising in pitch until it vibrated in their bones. On the main screen, a wave of distortion spread outward from Europa. Not light, not radiation, but a ripple in the fabric of space itself. It moved faster than light, silent and invisible, washing over the outer system. On the Eternal Edict, alarms blared. "Subspace collapse detected," a Varelian officer shouted. "FTL drives are offline. Long-range comms are failing. We're cut off." Kalen turned sharply. "Impossible. Nothing can disrupt subspace on this scale." But it was happening. One by one, the Armada's ships lost contact with each other. Navigation systems flickered. Warp cores went cold. The fleet, once a single unstoppable force, fractured into 2,000 isolated vessels, drifting in sudden, terrifying silence. Panic spread through the alien ranks. The Qatari ships tried to retreat, only to find their engines unresponsive. The Xanthari cruisers powered up their weapons, scanning for enemies, but saw nothing. No human ships. No missiles. Just empty space and a growing sense of dread. Back on Europa, Nora watched the data stream. Phase 1 is complete. They're stranded. No FTL, no comms, no coordination. Luke Hayes' voice came through from Earth. "They'll try to regroup using short-range signals. We have a window, maybe 4 hours." "More than enough," Nora said. Derek's fleet moved like ghosts. 12 corvettes, invisible to radar, slipped between the crippled warships. From their holds, they released thousands of small devices, no bigger than a human fist. Each carried a micro-trigger linked to the quantum seeds hidden across the system. They attached to hulls, clung to sensor arrays nestled in engine vents. The Council ships were being seeded, not with bombs, but with silence. Aboard the Eternal Edict, Kalen finally understood. "This is not surrender," he whispered. "This is a trap." He ordered all ships to power down non-essential systems to avoid triggering whatever mechanism the humans had deployed. But it was too late. The triggers were already in place, and they did not need power to activate. Nora gave the final command. "Initiate cascade." On the screen, a single point of darkness appeared near the lead Qatari vessel. It wasn't an explosion. There was no flash, no shockwave. The ship simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a massive warship bristling with weapons. The next it was gone. Not destroyed, not shattered, erased, as if it had never been. Then another vanished. And another. The effect spread like ink in water, smooth and unstoppable. Entire squadrons blinked out of reality, leaving no debris, no energy trace, no echo. The armada of purity was being unmade, atom by atom, by a force it could not see, could not fight, could not even understand. Kalen stared at the view screen as his fleet dissolved around him. He tried to send a warning to the Council homeworlds, but the comms were dead. He tried to launch escape pods, but the launch bays were already emptying into nothingness. He felt no pain, only disbelief. How could a young species wield such power? How could they choose to use it so quietly? On Earth, people watched the sky, not with fear but with grim relief. Telescopes showed the alien fleet shrinking, not from battle but from absence. Scientists recorded the event in stunned silence. Children asked their parents what was happening. The adults simply held them tighter. In less than 6 hours, it was over. 2,000 warships gone. Not a single human shot had been fired. Not a single human life lost. The armada of purity had crossed into soul space expecting to enforce order. Instead, it had met oblivion, and oblivion had worn a human face. Kalen's last thought as the darkness reached the Eternal Edict was not of anger, but of awe. Humanity had not fought like warriors. They had acted like gods. And in that final moment he understood the terrible truth. The Council had not been dealing with a reckless child. They had been standing before a storm that chose for once to speak softly, and now the galaxy would listen. The silence after the armada vanished was deeper than any before, not just quiet, empty, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath. On Earth, people stepped outside and looked up, not at the sky but at the space between the stars. They knew what had happened. They had seen the data streams, the telescope feeds, the final confirmation from Derek Boone's Corvette. The armada of purity was gone. Not defeated, not scattered, erased, and with it the illusion of the Council's invincibility. Yet no one celebrated. There were no parades, no victory songs. Instead, cities dimmed their lights further. Families gathered in living rooms, not to cheer, but to sit together in the weight of what they had done. Humanity had not just defended itself, it had crossed a line no species in known history had dared to cross. They had wielded a power that didn't just kill but unmade, and that kind of power left a stain on the soul. In the bunker beneath the Rockies, Luke Hayes stared at the main display. All Council signals from the Sol system had ceased. No distress calls, no escape pods, nothing. He turned to his team. "Status of the quantum field?" "Stable," a technician replied. "No spread beyond the outer system. The cascade self-terminated as designed." Luke nodded. The weapon had worked exactly as Nora predicted. Precise, contained, final. But that didn't make it feel right. He thought of the alien crews, beings with families, histories, dreams. They had come as conquerors, yes, but did that mean they deserved to be wiped from existence without a sound? He didn't have an answer. Only the cold comfort that if they hadn't acted, Earth would have been the one erased. On Europa, Nora Finch powered down the main console. The chamber grew still. The hum that had filled the air for weeks was gone. She removed her gloves and sat on the cold floor, her back against the wall. She had spent years chasing this theory, proving it could work. Now that it had, she felt no triumph, only exhaustion and a quiet sorrow. She had not wanted to be the one to press the button. But someone had to. And if not her, then who? Derek Boone guided his Corvette back toward the inner system. His crew was silent. They had watched warships vanish like smoke. They had deployed the triggers with steady hands, but now their eyes were hollow. One young pilot, barely 20, whispered, "Did we just become monsters?" Derek didn't answer right away. He looked at the empty space where the Armada had been. "Monsters don't give warnings," he finally said. "Monsters don't wait 30 days. Monsters don't try to talk first. We gave them every chance. They chose to come anyway." Back on Earth, President Elena Ruiz addressed the world, not with a speech but with a simple message broadcast on all channels. "We acted to protect our home. We did not seek this path, but we will not apologize for surviving. Let this be a lesson to any who would threaten us again. Humanity does not start wars, but we will end them." The message was short. No fanfare, no threats, just truth. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. Council outposts on distant worlds received no word from the Armada. Scans showed the Sol system quiet but intact. No human ships pursued the vanished fleet. No broadcast gloated, just silence. And in that silence, fear took root. On the Varelian homeworld, the ruling council convened an emergency session. But without Kalen, their unity crumbled. Some demanded immediate retaliation. Others argued that humanity now possessed a weapon beyond comprehension. A third faction suggested opening diplomatic channels before it was too late. For the first time in centuries, the council was divided. 2 of the 7 member species, the gentle Merathi and the scholarly Orlan, publicly withdrew from the council. They sent quiet messages to Earth, not of surrender, but of respect. "You showed restraint," their envoys wrote. "You used your power only when forced. We wish to speak not as rulers but as equals." The other species reacted with rage or terror. The Zenthari began fortifying their borders. The Qatari recalled all their fleets to home space. Rumors spread of secret meetings. Of weapons research restarted in panic. But no one dared move against Sol, not after what they had seen. On Earth, life slowly returned to something like normal. Schools reopened fully. Factories shifted back to civilian production. But everyone carried the knowledge of what had happened. Children learned not just math and history, but ethics and restraint. Scientists debated the future of quantum research. Some called for it to be banned forever. Others said it must be guarded, not abandoned. Nora Finch returned to Earth and disappeared into a small research station in the Canadian wilderness. She refused interviews. She declined honors. She only asked to be left alone with her thoughts and her notebooks. Sometimes she walked through the snow-covered woods listening to the wind. It reminded her that some things were still simple, still real. Derek Boone was offered command of Earth's new deep space defense fleet. He accepted, but only on one condition. No offensive missions. No patrols beyond our system unless invited. We protect, we don't provoke. Luke Hayes stepped down from his post a month later. He moved to a quiet town in New Mexico, bought a small house and started growing tomatoes. When asked why, he just smiled. "I've spent enough time planning endings. Now I want to help things grow." President Ruiz remained in office, but her leadership changed. She focused on rebuilding trust, not just among humans, but with the few alien species willing to reach out. Trade resumed with the Merathi. Cultural exchanges began with the Orlan. Slowly, carefully, humanity reached a hand across the stars, not as a threat, but as a neighbor who had learned the cost of silence. And through it all, the galaxy watched. No one attacked. No one tested Earth's borders. Ships that passed near the Sol system gave it a wide berth. When asked why, alien captains would simply say, "We remember the Armada." Humanity had not won a war. They had ended one before it truly began. And in doing so, they had changed the rules of the cosmos. Not with fire, not with fury, but with the terrible, quiet power of a species that had looked into the abyss, understood its own capacity for destruction, and chosen to use it only once. Now, the universe knew, cross humanity, and you won't be defeated. You'll be unmade, and in that unmaking, the stars themselves would fall silent. Years passed. The stars did not forget. The galaxy moved on, but it moved differently now. more carefully, more quietly. Where once council envoys had arrived with demands and ultimatums, new ships approached the edge of the Sol system with caution, their signals polite, their intentions clear. They came not to command, but to ask. And Earth, for its part, answered, not with weapons, not with silence, but with words. The first official visitor after the incident was Ambassador Vela of the Murathi. Her ship, a slender vessel shaped like a falling leaf, hovered at the agreed boundary near Neptune. She requested permission to enter. Earth granted it. She brought no guards, no weapons, only a data crystal containing centuries of Marathi poetry, and a single question: how do we earn your trust? President Elena Ruiz met her in orbit, aboard a peaceful science station that doubled as a diplomatic hub. There were no flags, no military escorts, just two women sitting across a table made of reclaimed lunar wood. Ruiz did not speak of power or victory. She spoke of loss, of fear, of the weight of choices made in the dark. Vela listened, and for the first time in her long life she understood that strength did not always roar. It sometimes whispered and still shook the world. Trade resumed slowly. Not in weapons or war tech, but in seeds, in music, in stories. The Orlan sent historians to study human archives. The Marathi shared star mapping techniques that helped Earth navigate safer routes through nebulae. No treaties were signed in grand halls. Agreements were made in quiet conversations, sealed with handshakes and shared meals. Humanity did not seek to lead. It simply chose to exist and to be respected. On Earth, life settled into a new rhythm. Children born after the incident grew up knowing a different truth, that their species had once stood alone against the might of the galaxy and did not flinch. But they were also taught that true courage was not in destruction, but in restraint. Schools taught the story of the Armada not as a legend of glory, but as a warning. Power without wisdom is ruin, the textbooks read, and silence can be louder than any bomb. Nora Finch never returned to quantum weapons research. Instead, she turned her mind to healing. She led a team that used stabilized vacuum fields to repair damaged ecosystems, cleaning polluted oceans, regrowing forests at the molecular level. When asked why she changed paths, she said simply, "I helped unmake. Now I want to help remake." Derek Boone's fleet remained small, but its presence was felt. His corvettes patrolled the outer edges of human space, not to threaten, but to watch. When a lost freighter from a minor species drifted too close to a black hole, his crew rescued it without firing a shot. When a solar flare threatened a Marathi research outpost near Pluto, his ships shielded it with their hulls. Over time, his name became not a symbol of fear, but of reliability. Alien pilots would say, "If Boone's out there, we're safe." Luke Hayes still grew tomatoes, but he also wrote. His memoir, titled The Quiet Choice, became required reading in diplomacy schools across 3 species. In it, he described the days before the Armada arrived, not with drama, but with the simple truth of ordinary people choosing to do extraordinary things without fanfare. "We didn't want to be remembered as warriors," he wrote. "We just wanted to be left alone." And sometimes the loudest way to say that is to say nothing at all. The Galactic Council never officially reformed. 2 species vanished into isolation, ashamed or afraid. 2 others formed a new alliance focused on cooperation, not control. The remaining 3 drifted apart, their influence fading like old stars. In their place, a loose network of independent systems began to speak with one voice, not through force but through shared experience. And at the center of it all quietly stood humanity. No one challenged Earth again, not because they feared its weapons, though they did, but because they respected its judgment. When a young species on the galactic fringe began developing dangerous AI, it was Earth that was asked to mediate. When a comet threatened a colony world, it was human engineers who helped divert it. Humanity had become the galaxy's silent guardian, not by taking charge but by showing up when it mattered. And through it all, Earth remained humble. No monuments were built to the day the Armada vanished. No holidays celebrated the victory. Instead, on the anniversary of the ultimatum, people across the planet lit small lanterns and released them into the night sky. Not as a boast, but as a promise, that they would never forget what silence could cost and what it could protect. Alien scholars came to study this quiet strength. They watched humans laugh in markets, argue in parliaments, cry at funerals, and build homes on distant moons. They saw a species that had faced extinction and chosen not to become monsters. And they began to understand why the universe had grown quieter since that day. Not because life had ended, but because it had learned to listen. Years turned into decades. New generations rose. Ships with human markings traveled deeper into space than ever before, but always with open comms, always with peaceful intent. When they met new species, they did not demand surrender. They offered friendship, and more often than not, it was accepted. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. Cross humanity, and you would not be met with rage or revenge. You would be met with silence, and in that silence, your end would come not with a scream, but with a breath. And so the stars remained calm, not out of fear alone, but out of respect, for humanity had not just survived. It had shown the cosmos that the most powerful force in the universe was not fire, not speed, not even time, but the choice to walk away from the edge and still be feared.